Call the meeting to order. Meeting of the Carver Board of Selectmen, January 3rd, 2017. I hope everyone had a wonderful new year. This meeting's being cablecast by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 15. We have openings on several committees. Please refer to the Board of Selectmen page on our website for a listing and application. Donations to the food pantry can be made at the Council on Aging or the Public Library. I was wondering if that needs to be amended now that Shane Gives Thanks has relocated the food pantry over to Carver Square.
That would be appropriate, yes.
All right.
We'd like it to go directly there, not to the Council on Aging or the Public Library.
Well, can we ask you to follow up on that before our next meeting? Thank you.
Better off asking Wayne.
You're going to write that down, or? Okay, thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our community prayer. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for all the citizens of our community that we've been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek. And keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen. This is the moment in our, the time in our meetings when we ask any citizens that are present to join us. We set aside 10 minutes at the start of all our meetings. Any citizens that would like to address the board and bring up any issues of concern, we ask you to hold those comments to about 3 minutes so that others may speak during that time. Were there any citizens that wanted to step forward this evening? There being none, I will note that Selectman Robertson is down with a bad flu, which is why he's not here tonight, and I'm going to guess that Selectman Maroney is stuck in some awful traffic trying to get down Route 128 and will probably be joining us as soon as she possibly can get here. But it's bad weather outside tonight, and I'm sure that she's doing everything she can to get here. It being 7:05, we have with us John O'Rourke to give us an update on the Serpent Energy aggregation. Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the board, for allowing me to speak to you tonight. My apologies for December 3rd. I had a car problem on the way down. I couldn't make the appointment.
Thank you. Whenever you're ready, sir.
As you know, about a year ago now, the aggregation program started. We had a very good bid from Con Ed Solutions that was accepted by the 23 towns that are in the SERPED aggregation. Some of those towns are not actually located in SERPED, but they joined the aggregation because they thought the bid was very good.
John, I'm sorry, can I interrupt you for one second? If you could very briefly, for the public at home who's watching, just explain what you're actually talking about, their electric bills, and just so we know what you're talking about, but the aggregation may not be clear to the public.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes. The reason for the aggregation is threefold. First of all, to get a reduced rate on electric charges on the supply portion of the bill. The second objective is to have a rate that stays stable and fixed for a longer period of time. In this case, that's a 2-year contract, so it will go for another year until January 2018. And the third objective of the aggregation is to give more renewable energy options for individuals that want to take advantage of those. As you know, at this point, I'll just go through this, this handout quickly, and then I'll open it up for questions. Again, there have been some problems here in Massachusetts with high electricity rates. I'm sure you're all aware that in Massachusetts, the rates are among the highest in the country. Part of that, at least some people believe, is because of the shortage of natural gas supplies coming into Massachusetts. And that's why you see the volatility and the winter spikes, and as well as the spikes in July and August, when those plants have to be supplemented by either coal or oil plants, which are more expensive to run, and you see those spikes. The objective that we do as a consultant to the aggregation is to buy strategically. The utilities have to buy at very specific times of the year. As a matter of fact, they each have to buy on a specific day of the year, whether the market is good or not. You saw in a couple of years ago, the rate for National Grid went up to about 16 cents. The rate for Eversource, which you are in, was about 13 cents. This was, again, because of those times when they cannot buy strategically. Our purpose and the way we are in the market, because we have we're not only in the aggregation business, but we have a large commercial and industrial client base. We're watching the market every day for opportunities to buy for our clients at lower rates. So we're able to do that, and that's why we're able to get lower prices. As you can see on slide 3, these are the towns in the aggregation with the populations. There's over 500,000 people involved in this aggregation. That gives us a tremendous amount of buying power when we go out to bid for the aggregation. When you're dealing with your local utility, you're dealing on a one consumer to the utility basis, and that gives you virtually no bargaining power. Our objective is to put aggregations together to attract nationally known and recognized suppliers who will come in and want to bid on that business. And again, that's why we have been able to get a lower price in the aggregation. The next page is just the latest redesign of the Eversource bill. And again, we deal with the supply portion of the bill, not the distribution portion of the bill. And again, for your residents, Eversource provides distribution, they provide service. If there are any outages, you still call Eversource. The only portion of the bill that's affected is the bill for supply, which we negotiate. The next page is a list of all of the benefits of aggregation, which you're basically all familiar with. The next page is the Eversource historical rates. As you can see, they're all the way to the right. Their rate right now is 10.32 cents per kilowatt hour. The aggregation rate is 9.49 cents. So it's about 0.8 of a penny below that rate. We were slightly above the rate in the last 6 months. In the first 6 months of the aggregation, we were significantly below their rate. So on the next page, you can see an analysis of where the aggregation is up to this point. The rate for Eversource just changed, or will change it just changed on January 1 to 10.32. again, our rate is the 949. We are expecting in the next rate change, which will take effect in July, it'll be around, we think, around 11.5. The reason for that is because there are going to be increased capacity charges here in what's known as the Southeast Massachusetts load zone because of plants that are being retired, and that causes an increase in capacity charges. So our rate, we're expecting in the next adjustment to be close to 2 cents below what Eversource will be charging. So over the 2 years of the contract, we're again expecting substantial savings to your residents and to the members of the aggregation. The next page shows the natural gas 12-month strip. You can see that dip in December and March. That's one of the reasons why Eversource was able to get below our rate, is because it just happened to coincide with this dip in the natural gas 12-month strip. The next page is the account enrollments. You can see in January of last year it started at about 3,283, and right now it's up to 3,506 as of September. Those are residential accounts. The cumulative savings through September was about $51,680 for those accounts. Again, we're expecting savings during this period, this next 6 months period, from January 1 through June 30, and substantial savings in the next period from July 1 through December 31st of this year. We are going to start, again, the term ends for this aggregation in January of next year. We will start watching the market for buying opportunities in March, and we will be, from then on, in touch with all the members in the aggregation to let them know where we think the market is in terms of buying opportunities and how it would be best to proceed for a renewal of the aggregation. And again, we will let you know when the best time to do that will be, and again, we will get everybody together, and like as we did last time, we had 23 communities in the room at the same time. We opened the bids that we received, and everybody decided to elect the 2-year contract rather than the 1-year contract. One of the things that's happened recently is that Con Ed Solutions was purchased by Constellation New Energy. That doesn't affect the aggregation rate at all. It's just a matter of one company that's purchased the other. We are now talking with 2 other suppliers who are very interested in coming into the market, and we're reasonably sure they will come into the market. We're talking to a 3rd who is very interested. And again, that's because of the fact that the aggregation is a big number in terms of population, and most of these companies have just about saturated the commercial and industrial markets, so they can't grow much through those markets, but they can grow through the residential market. And both Eversource and National Grid, basically they're supply neutral. They don't make any money on the supply of electricity. They only make money on the distribution. So they don't care who supplies the electricity, and essentially they have become very adept at allowing suppliers to come in and do the information exchanges that need to be done between their systems and the supplier systems so that everything runs smoothly. I'll open it up for questions.
Mr. Dunham?
Yeah, because it's been a while since Carver went into this program. How can a resident tell whether they're part of this program or not? Because I know some people opted out, we've had other people move in that may not have been aware of it. How can they look at the bill and say, "Oh, okay, I'm still in this program"?
Well, on the bill page, you see that round circle.
Yeah, because it's kind of blurry.
Yes, that will on the bill. Well, this bill is a smaller version of the actual bill. You get a larger copy. It's basically an 8.5 by 11 sheet.
Well, most people get a lot of people get theirs electronically now. They don't even see a paper bill, and it's just like, oh, okay, it paid because it's being done automatically.
Under the supplier portion of the bill, the name of the supplier is Con Ed Solutions if they're in the aggregation. If they have chosen another supplier in the course of this year, that'll have that name on the bill. If they want to get into the aggregation and their contract from a third-party supplier has expired, they can call us. If you get a call, you can just refer it to us, and we'll get them switched over. If a new resident comes into the neighborhood, they are automatically sent an opt-out letter, just like the original opt-out letter that was sent to the clients of the aggregation back in January, and they can choose to come into the aggregation. So all they need to do is look at the supply name on the bill to know if they're in the aggregation or not.
And those that opted out have to wait now till January of next year to be able to get in on it again.
Well, that's essentially what we say publicly. But if someone wants to get into the aggregation, the Con Ed Solutions will put them in the aggregation at the price of the aggregation, not at the market price.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah?
Thank you. So just to be real clear, the aggregation refers to a number of communities who've all decided to buy their energy in this particular way so that they have lower rates.
That's correct.
Right. I just wanted to be clear on that. Where do we buy our energy from for this particular, where does Con Edison buy that particular energy from?
Each quarter, Con Edison sends out or has on their website a disclosure notice, which basically says where that energy is coming from in terms of the fuel mix of that energy. And again, in Massachusetts for 2017, all electricity has to have at least 12% renewable in the mix, and the rest of it is basically the mix in the grid, which today there's a very nice app that the ISO New England has. They're the people that run the grid, and right now 45% of our electricity is being generated by natural gas, another 30% by nuclear, 11% by renewables, about 5% by coal, and about 10% by hydro. And they have a real-time app that tells you at every time during the day what the fuel mix is of the generation. So
your company doesn't actually go out there and buy renewables for us?
What we do is we negotiate with the suppliers, okay? And again, the renewable mix, no matter who is supplying it right now for 2017, is 12%. Now, that'll go up 1% a year until 2020 under the energy renewables, the renewable portfolio standard. And then in 2020, I'm sure that will be negotiated to carry on so that the percentage goes up each year.
So I guess I was under the impression when we first started this that you were here mainly to get renewables for us, but then that's not the case. Your goal is to just bring the price down.
Well, okay, initially our goal is economic. We want to lower the price. On top of that, okay, we have a couple of communities that opted to do a 5% slice above the RPS requirement from Massachusetts Class 1 RECs, which are from projects, renewable projects in Massachusetts that generate that energy. And one of the reasons for that is because that slice, that renewable slice, and we got it for about 2 mills for those two towns that wanted it. That helps fund other renewable projects here in Massachusetts. So even though it sounds like a small amount, you know, you hear some towns go 100% green. Well, that 100% green in most cases is coming from Maine Hydro, where the RECs, the renewable energy credits, are very inexpensive. The problem is that that doesn't add any new renewables to the grid. What we're doing in Massachusetts with that 5% slice, which is, again, with Massachusetts Class 1 RECs, that adds substantially to the funding of new projects here in Massachusetts.
So if we were to be one of the towns that opted to go to the 5% renewables, is there any chance that would help some of the projects, some of the solar projects that are stalled here in Carver?
Most of the generation that the RECs that we use are from local wind. Okay, and the reason for that is because the RECs for wind are far less expensive than the SRECs, the solar renewable energy credits that come from solar projects. Is your project a community project?
No, I just know that there are at least 4 solar projects in town that are stalled because they're being charged outrageous hookup fees, basically.
Well, one of the problems is that, especially on the Eversource side, the delay in getting projects connected to the grid is substantial. It's sometimes 6 to 9 months, and it is expensive. That's something that Eversource is doing, and I believe that the Department of Public Utilities is looking into those matters, because they're interested on the Commonwealth level, of course, to get more projects online. From the utility point of view, and from the ISO point of view, renewable energy projects are less reliable than conventional generators, because if the wind isn't blowing, if the sun isn't shining, you don't know how much energy you're going to get from those projects. And reliability is one of the aspects that ISO New England attempts to make sure they have enough demand, they have enough generation to meet the demand, and the more renewable energy projects you put into the mix, the more unreliability you're introducing to the whole grid. So there's a real balancing act that has to go on to bring those projects on in a certain way and in a certain mix and a certain timing.
Okay. So what do we tell people who are complaining about their electric bill right now? That it's higher than it was at this time last year?
Well, if they're on the aggregation, their price is almost a penny lower than Eversource. Okay. And again, in the next, starting January 1st, starting July 1st, again because of the capacity charge increase that's substantial here in the SEMA load zone, they're going to be close to, we think, 11.5. So it's going to be another penny 0.2 increase, which is unusual because essentially in the summer it's usually a little lower. It's higher in the winter, but this time, because of that situation, it's going to be higher. And then next winter, it's going to be higher again.
So that's less per kilowatt hour.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Alan?
Yeah, just a quick one. I've always understood that using renewables adds to the cost. Isn't there a bigger cost for using like wind power generation?
There is an added cost for renewables. The less expensive added cost is from wind. Solar is more expensive.
But there still is an additional cost. So why would a town want to say, oh, I want another 5% renewable to go ahead and increase their citizens' rates again?
Well, again, for the two communities right now that we have online, we basically did a price situation for them where the standard project had an additional 5%. Okay, so that would be what everybody would go into, except if they wanted to opt out of that into a basic product, which was at the same rate as the RPS requirement for the state, which everybody has to be at. So that's the minimum. Or they could buy an additional amount of renewables above that. Okay, but those were two individual choices.
And the amount that the renewable has to be each year going up another percentage, that's by state law?
That's by state law.
It's not
Yes.
by a federal law?
No, it's state law.
It's state law.
No?
And one of the reasons for it is so that we can stop using things like coal. And the more renewables we use, eventually the cheaper they will be.
That's correct.
I don't want to get into it.
That's the theory.
An environmental
Yes.
debate right now, but
Yes.
Well,
I was just pointing out
that's
cost
just the way
right
it
now.
is.
Yes, and essentially for those towns that we got that extra slice, we did it for 2 mills more. Economically, we were saving them a penny to a penny and a half. So we still had the economic advantage, and we put that additional 2 mills on. So it was still below the rate for the utility, and they were getting that green. So that was the reason for that. But again, from that standard product of that additional 5%, they could opt out to the basic product, which had no more green in it, or they could make an individual choice to go higher if they wanted to.
So just to be clear, in those two communities, the ratepayers had a choice of paying the basic rate, or if they wanted to invest more in renewables, they could pay. They could take that larger rate, which meant more money was going towards those renewable projects.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and essentially, you know, there's obviously political reasons for that. You don't want anybody coming up to the select board and saying, "Oh, you're making me buy green energy." Okay, so that's the reason why from that standard product, which had the additional 5% in it, they could opt down to the basic, or up to a situation where they could buy up to 100% on their own.
The individual ratepayer.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And as we're approaching the renewal next year, if let's say Carver wanted to give its citizens that option, what's involved if we wanted to be one of those communities that gave their ratepayers the option of paying the lower rate, or if they wanted to pay a slightly higher rate that was more heavily invested in renewables?
We would just use the green energy model that we've used for these two towns, and you know, you can review it and say, yeah, we like this, or you know.
Okay, so as we approach the next renewal, we can discuss that.
That's correct. Yes.
Right, but would it go out that then the ratepayers would have to opt out of the higher rate, or could it be set up that this is what your rate is, and if you want to do the higher rate, then you opt into that?
In the customer notification letter that goes out at the beginning of the aggregation and for the renewal, it'll have 3 options. It'll have the standard option, the basic option, and then the more green energy option.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I had one question. One of the pages of the PowerPoint show that within all the, was it 23 communities?
Yes.
It's a population of about 518,000. And then later on, you talk about the account enrollments, 3,500 residences. So am I wrong that the universe of potential accounts is much greater than those that have actually signed up so far?
Well, okay, don't forget this is population, and back here this is accounts.
Right.
So these accounts, you're talking about households with 2.5 to 3 people in them. So it's an account situation rather than a population situation. So for instance, in Carver, you have about 11,500 residents, but again, you only have 3,506 accounts because of the fact that you have.
This page is specific to Carver?
Yes.
All right, I missed that. That's where I was confused. I thought I thought that was it doesn't indicate that that's just Carver, so that's why.
Oh no, I'm sorry. That's specifically for
that
Carver.
makes a lot more sense now.
I
Okay.
was looking at the same thing because I was thinking 51,000 saved over the whole region.
No, that's
it's a
just for
totally
Carver.
different number.
That brings
Carver, this program has saved the town of Carver $51,000 since its inception.
and 3,500 of our residences are enrolled in the program, so it's a very
Yes.
high percentage.
Just
Yes.
in your defense, I figured that was just Carver.
Okay. Yeah, this is specific to just Carver.
Okay, well that takes away my next 5 questions.
Okay.
So that's about $14 per household.
Well, you're going to see in the in this 6 month and the next 6 month, that'll be substantially better. But we have basically achieved our goals of a lower rate, of more stability over time, and again, options for renewables if the residents want it.
Do you have any rough idea of what the overall account penetration is for the entire 23 communities?
We've experienced an opt-out of about 5%, okay? And then on top of that, there were probably another 12% who were already with other suppliers. So around 16, 17% of the total accounts were not in the aggregation, but again, you had 83, 84% who were in the aggregation.
Okay. I was one of those that had another supplier at the point in time that this came in. Okay. So once that ran out, I was able to opt in.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions?
I just have one. You were talking about this geographic area is having a higher energy cost that could be associated with natural gas and some of the transmission costs that are here. And you called it an ISO something southeastern Mass?
The SEMA region, which is the southeastern Massachusetts.
Approximately where to where?
If you look at a map of Massachusetts and you draw a line from Boston to about the Worcester line and south, that's the SEMA load zone. Above that is the NEMA load zone.
All right, so under the Mass Pike.
Okay, that's pretty fair. Yeah. There are increased capacity charges because of plants that are being shut down here in this load zone. Your rates aren't near what the NEMA rates are going to be. The NEMA rates are really going to be high next time around. Okay, so the SEMA load zone is doing okay right now, but in this next turnaround with NEMA, it's going to be much higher. So
we're losing plants, although it's not as high as NEMA. Our rates are higher nationally because of that. You mentioned in your app that 30% of our energy comes from nuclear, which I'm assuming is right next door in Pilgrim.
Yes, which is going offline shortly. So
yeah. Are we then going to be, when that comes offline, higher than NEMA? I mean, what's our forecast that I'm trying to understand?
The capacity charges are going to increase in the SEMA load zone for the next 3 to 4 6-month periods. In the SEMA load zone. In NEMA, they're going up even higher and then coming down a bit. So you can expect over the next 18 months that your rates are going to continue to increase on the utility side. We're going to do what we can to lower those rates and to keep them more stable.
So hopefully this program will continue to be better than
Oh, it will be.
Eversource alternative.
Yes, it will.
It's just that it may not be as good as it is now because of these outside
That's
factors.
correct. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you very much.
Forward to seeing you, I guess, probably late spring, early summer.
Well, again, you know, as soon as March comes around, we'll be in touch and we'll be talking about, you know, what the next step should be.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
Everybody have a good night.
You too.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the town administrator update.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'd like to just quickly go over the FY18 budget. Let me start off by saying that the budget is balanced within a 99.999%. With the holiday break between Christmas and New Year's and some other scheduled vacation, there's about $10,000 to $12,000 that still needs to be reallocated through the budget. So again, we're talking a budget of from the town side of over $10 million, and so it's virtually balanced. Again, it's just a $12,000 component that's there. So I'm going to get that out to you shortly, hopefully by the end of this week. However, what I do want to do is take this opportunity and kind of hit some of the highlights with the budget. This is a level service budget. There have been no cuts in services in the budget. Everything that has been requested for services will continue to be funded. So that's the first piece. The second piece is that there are 2 staffing changes that will be adjusted in this year's budget. The first is an item that you're well aware of from last year, and we funded the Assistant Deputy Fire Chief's position to start this January. That position has been, that person has been selected through a selection process, and the chief will be coming at our next meeting to make that announcement. With that, we have to fund the additional salary component into next year's budget for a full 12 months, because again, we were planning to implement that in halfway. So that position is fully funded for the proposed FY18 budget. Secondly, as you know, we're in the process of building new buildings, and with new buildings comes new technology and maintenance requirements, particularly with the fire station coming online. We recently had a retirement of an individual who was working part-time in the Council on Aging out of the COA budget, who was maintaining the COA building. With that, what is built into the DPW budget now is to take that funding and supplement that funding and turn that into a full-time maintenance worker who will not only continue to do the Council on Aging facility, but they will also then assist in the new fire station and other locations and buildings that John Woods will assign them to. So in essence, that is the staffing changes that will be in the budget. That's where you're going to see, you know, two changes that's significantly different.
So essentially, we're just taking 2 half-time positions that are, as they're funded now, and making them full-time.
Right, and one was already planned, again, the Assistant Deputy Chief, and the other one was we knew we were going to have to add some support with the new buildings coming online because of the technology required to run those and deal with those and the additional square footage, and so this is the time to do that. The next item that I have is we are also going through the budget booklet, and we're working on trying to add better clarity to some of the departments. We're trying to, and I'm going to focus on DPW. We're pulling some of the buildings and ground staffing that was still budgeted outside their budget into the budget, so we have a better picture of what that looks like. Historically, there were several line items within the DPW budget that had items that were paid out of those line items that don't naturally fit into those categories, but that's historically where they were paid out of. So we're in the process of working with John and Elaine and Shelby, and we're trying to better articulate those titles of the expense line items so we can do better tracking. I'll give you another example with the North Carver Water District. Marlene's working on this for them. Is they had a maintenance and repair budget. Okay, great. You need a maintenance and repair budget. But the problem is if you wanted to know how much was spent on well one, because given the sand that we have and the water quality, we're actually going through pumps faster than any of our peers because of the water, the minerals in the water and so forth. But we can't easily extract that information based upon the way our budget chart of accounts are set up. So we're looking at breaking those out so that we can better track that and manage that in the future. So you're going to see some reformatting changes with the budget. The last item that I want to talk about from the operation budget, and again, this is all being funded within our allocation that was previously approved by this board in December. I'm sorry, November, which is also what the school is doing. As you're aware, the non-union employees for 9 years have not received any COLA increase. Now, last year we did do a one-time COLA increase, not a COLA increase, but a one-time 2% increase that did not go into the base, and it was a retroactive component. I'm still going to be addressing that when we get to our free cash allocation, but given some of the modifications we've done with the budget, again, all still being a level service budget, we have budgeted in there a 2% COLA for non-union employees. And again, that's the first time that's happened in 9 years. So that is built into our FY18 budget. So those are the highlights, if you will, of the budget. There's no other significant changes from there. With the, I'm sorry, I got one other exception, and that is with the assessing department, is that we've gone through the transition, we've evaluated that transition, and based upon recommendations from our finance director and also our principal assessor, we are going to be funding that second position for the majority of the year. We're just debating whether it's going to be a full 35-hour-a-week position or whether it's slightly less than that, but it's most likely going to be a 35-hour-a-week position. So we did identify that we do need to have that position available going forward. So we were going to evaluate that over the 6-month period. We've done that evaluation and determined that at this point, at this time, we do need that position. Doesn't mean we won't address it in years to come, but for right now, for 2018, we do believe we need that position going forward.
What about the health agent?
The health agent right now is a part-time position. And
we were going to do a similar type of evaluation to see how that worked.
At this point, we are able to adequately maintain the operations of that department. Right now, we have more of a concern with the Board of Health members than we do with the health agent and making sure that they're healthy and on board. But as the health agent in that responsibility for that, also for the building inspector, is that's being adequately maintained at this point.
So
and what about the conservation agent?
No change there. That one's doing extremely well of all the departments, and Brooke has done a phenomenal job there.
On the health agent, so you're satisfied that there's been no diminishment of services, and is there savings associated? Because I know we're having to, pay outsiders to do weights and measures and have other people do some of the inspections that used to be done in-house. Mm-hmm. As you take a look at the financial analysis of the cost associated with doing it this way, there is a savings without a diminishment of services?
That's correct, and that savings was budgeted into this FY17 budget. We're able to live within that budget number. And the weights and measures, we're finding it's working extremely well with assistance from other towns.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Alan?
So basically, you achieved the balanced budget with the exception of trying to wiggle around 10 to 12,000. Now, this is including the extra revolving account for special ed for the school that we're creating, and also the extra account to help offset any costs for layoffs.
Yes and no. First answer to your question is no, that budget does not include that because we're talking the operation budget. However, those funds that we talked about for unemployment, special ed, that would be an allocation out of our free cash, which, yes, we do have money budgeted for that, but that's one-time money
Right.
going into those accounts.
But we're
I'm
still-
just distinguishing between the operation budget, which
Right.
I'm focused on right now with salaries and recurring expenses, versus those which we've committed to doing, but those will be funded externally.
Bottom line, we're watching our citizens' money as best as we can.
Extremely tight, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and I will say on that point, this budget is a very, very tight budget. And we're doing that to, you know, again, just get the maximum services we can from the town.
Thank you.
Continue, sir.
Let's see. I've got a whole pile of stuff here. As it relates to the update on the urban renewal plan, we have that hearing set for this Thursday. It's 7 o'clock. And just to reemphasize, the plan was approved unanimously by the Carver Redevelopment Authority. The plan was approved unanimously by the Carver Planning Board, being consistent with the town master plan and the town survey. So that is done. You have in your packets the updated plan. The only thing that's changed with that plan is that the one property that was voted to be taken out has been removed, and the tables have been updated accordingly. So I think we're all set for the hearing on Thursday, and if anyone has any questions, please feel free to let me know. We're planning on having Will Sinclair will be presenting the plan along with Marlene. I have a few comments on the economics, and you'll also be having a brief presentation from the infrastructure developer that's partnered with the Redevelopment Authority on Thursday as well.
And who is the infrastructure developer?
That's the Route 44 developer.
Oh, okay.
I'm emphasizing infrastructure developer. People have heard the word developer, but I want to distinguish. There's an infrastructure developer who's going to build the roads and the stormwater drainage and the utilities, and that's who the Redevelopment Authority has a partner with. Property will then be sold off in the future to end users who will build the buildings, and those will also have to be permitted just like the subdivision.
Anything else? No?
Okay. The vote to authorize the transfer of 94 Forest Street to the Redevelopment Authority. I've been asked to have that tabled tonight. There's just some legal issues that are being worked out by the Redevelopment Authority, including having an updated land survey for the property to clear up any confusion on the exact square footage. So,
Can we ask a question about it?
please.
Okay. So was it a foreclosure that went into tax title?
Yes, so the town took this property back in 2016, I believe it was, 2015.
Okay.
And it was originally, I think, when the Board of Selectmen voted it, we had called it 0 Main Street, when in fact it ends up being 94 Forest Street.
Oh, okay. I know where that.
That parcel that
Right.
was there, just under, around an acre.
Got it. Okay.
So that's already been foreclosed upon by the town. The town owns that. The Board of Selectmen voted 2 years ago to authorize the Redevelopment Authority to move forward in marketing the property based upon the zoning. They've been out marketing it for over a year and a half. They have a buyer with a committed number. And again, now we're just dealing with some legal issues.
So there's no residents on that property?
No, this
Yeah.
is just vacant land. It's vacant land zoned, it's zoned commercial, and I just forget what zone it's in.
Okay.
The update on the elementary school, we have an updated schedule that came out finally from our contractor. As a result, I will be releasing the first payment for them later this week. One of their contractual obligations was that we needed to have a schedule that was approved by our project manager and architect based upon the contract. It's taken them longer than we anticipated. They're still working while the schedule was being developed, but that schedule is an important component to hold the project to the proper sequence of events so that we can better manage that. And again, there was a delay on that. That was released today, and we'll be releasing payments to them later this week.
What's the state of the foundation?
So the state of the foundation is, I can't tell you exactly what percentage is done. We'll be getting that report within the next couple days. Remember how we're going to have the monthly report? It'll show where that is. But they are actively putting in the foundations. They decommissioned the well closest to Route 58 on Monday. No, I'm sorry, on Friday. So that has been decommissioned. So now they're just continuing to expand the footings. The weather's cooperating.
I was going to say
There's only been one day that they didn't pour, and that was the day where we had temperature down to 2 degrees, and they just didn't pour that day. But other than that, everything has been done with just normal blankets because the concrete generates heat anyway. But you just can't have multiple days in single digits, you know, without doing something. The good news is the foundations are easier to manage because they're lower and they're bigger, so they generate more heat than when they start to do walls, which they're going to have to pay some particular attention to as those are going up. So they have the schedule and they're working towards it.
Okay, thank you.
The fire station is tentatively planned to be opened on January 15th as far as operations are concerned. So they will be they will be leaving that facility with their vehicles after January 15th. One thing that is not going to move over there is our dispatchers. The dispatchers are not going to move over there until February 15th. Part of the reason for that is that we're 911, the state 911 system is upgrading our police dispatchers, and which means in mid-February, and they need to do both of them at the same time. So we're going to have that one updated while the new one's put online. That should not impact any services at all. We are substantially complete with the building. So that has happened. We're now working through a punch list. That punch list hopefully will be also completed by January 10th. There will be a couple things that'll be delayed, such as planting some hydro seed and doing some exterior painting that we know will be extended until the spring. But we're hoping to have most of the interior work done by the 10th. And again, that committee with Bill Harriman and the chief and others are just doing a phenomenal job in managing that. And they will be returning money back to the town, and we'll get full documentation of that in late January, what we're looking at. So that is going very well. I have a couple other quick updates that I'm going to just run through. The MMA, the Mass Municipal Association's annual meeting and trade show is going to be January 20th and January 21st. It's a Friday, Saturday. If you have time available, it's interesting to go on the Friday. They have plenty of seminars, and the governor speaks as well as many of the main secretariats. You know, there's a shortfall, there's a slow revenue growth this year for 2017, and it's the same thing going into 2018, so they're going to be addressing that as well and giving municipal managers some information. But that's available, and we have funding for that if any selectman wants to go to that.
It does require registration.
It does require registration, which our office can do.
Are you attending?
I am not attending. I am going away with my son that day, that weekend.
Elaine's
But
going.
Elaine and Shelby are going, I believe.
All the better.
That's correct.
Good representation.
Yes.
Let's see. I have a reminder from Chief Walsh, and that he is looking for your pagers, and he'd like to have your pagers returned to him. He's determined that the technology with pagers is not quite effective anymore, so he's going to be canceling that service, and he needs to return the pagers to Nextel A couple other updates. And this is a good accomplishment from one of our key employees is Paula Newt received word that she had passed the treasurer's exam. It's a 3-year process to get that certification. She previously had the town collector certification, so now she's duly certified in both the treasurer and collecting certification for the state. And that's a 6-year process, or 3 years for each one of them, so a total of 6 years. And it has to be done sequentially like that. There's no way to short circuit that. So we're very happy that she passed that, and she's now a certified collector and treasurer, which is great for the town.
Congratulations to Paula.
Yes, really.
It is now past January 1st, 2017, and we have the new public records law that has gone into effect. As a result of that, we have to have assigned a records access officer, an RAO, who's directly responsible for handling different requests. And the timelines are more stringent. There's potential fines. There's potential court cost should a town arbitrarily or an individual arbitrarily deny access to public records. With that, we're going to be appointing each one of our 3 chiefs as a records access officer, because a lot of records requests are police reports, fire reports, medical reports from an ambulance type thing. And it's just much easier for them to handle that, as they always do anyway. And then from the standpoint of the town, that will fall onto the town clerk. And Lynn does this to some extent anyway, but I'm just making it clear that she will be the records access officer for the town. And what I'm going to ask her to do is to kind of keep track of the records that come in, and I'd like to have her come in, you know, every other month or quarterly or whatever it may be, and give an update to the board as to the amount of records requests that are coming in. You know, what happens now, and we're a complete transparent organization, and always been that way, and we make sure everything gets out. However, what has happened now with this new records law is that you can have a company in Minnesota, I'm just picking a state, that does analysis on number of taxpayers and other type of banking type analysis to determine the value of houses in the town and so on and so forth. The point being is they can fax us a request, broadcast it to every town in Massachusetts. When that fax document comes in, we have to respond to that. And we have to, you know, if that takes 3 hours to do, we have to do that for free. If it takes longer, we do have the ability of charging them a nominal fee for that. What I'm concerned about is some private organizations are going to try to use public staff to do data mining, that then they can use that information and sell privately as an index, as a database. So that's kind of the reason why I want to have, why I would like us to track these for a period of time and then update the board as to what some of the impacts are going to be. Now, historically in Massachusetts, the towns and cities, we have relatively strict public records laws, and we have to abide by those. Unfortunately, I think what is being talked about in the state is the state legislature and also the executive offices in the state are exempt from all public records regulations. So although the state passed, you know, these robust regulations, it didn't affect them, it only affects us. And I just want us to monitor this for a while to make sure that it's not going to become overbearing. If it is overbearing, then hopefully a bunch of us communities can get together and hopefully do some reform so that we don't have, you know, the so-called data mining that I'm talking about for private interest, which could occur. I'm hoping it doesn't, but legally and technically it can. It's more than you want to know about public records, but anyway, that's that. We have our, hopefully we'll have our draft audit released in the next 10 days or so, if not sooner, with our management letter. So we'll get that to the board, and then we'll try to schedule having Dick Sullivan come in our next meeting, or the first meeting in February, to give his update on the status of the town. And then finally, one of the things that we're working on as a result of some conversations that the board had before in December regarding some of the licenses that you issue, and where some folks may not be up to date on their taxes, and as I mentioned, that the town does, if someone pays their tax bill late, the town does collect a 14% interest rate on them. That being said, is that we need to establish some policies, and we're going to be working with our finance team on that, so that when there is some taxes due, we monitor how much those taxes are compared to the valuation of their property, because that was a question you guys had asked, and certainly we want to make sure that the taxes never exceed the valuation of the property, because then at that point we'll never get our money back. And so we're going to be working on putting together some policies for that in the very near future. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the Board of Selectmen update. I'll start with Ms. Hewins.
Thank you. I was going to comment on the searchlights we have out front there. I've had a number of residents mention them to me. I'm just wondering if we could lower the wattage on those bulbs a little bit. They're the same, the new ones that just lit up, the runway out there with the searchlights. In other words, the same lamps are being used in front of Town Hall and the library, different bulbs in them. And there's some over at the library that have similar bulbs, but it's a lower wattage. It just doesn't feel right in this town center for it to be so bright. On a rainy night, I don't know about anybody else, but I can't see the lines in the road. So anyway, it's not just me. It is something that people have mentioned. It just doesn't go with our town center.
Wasn't that something the state did? I mean, they were in control of the whole project.
Well, they asked us the kind of lamp we liked, and so that's why we got the lamps shaped the way they are. I don't recall anyone asking us, the wattage of bulb.
So
we
you're
can
suggesting
certainly
we put a lower wattage bulb in there so it's not as bright?
Yes, something that's a little less Times Square.
Okay. I mean, one man's opinion. Aesthetically, I like it, but if there's a popular uprising against them, I certainly wouldn't have a problem if we dim the lights.
Well, again, over at the library, it's the same kind of color of bulb. They're just a lower wattage, so you just don't, it lights it up nicely, but you just don't, need sunglasses.
Could we ask John Woods to make some inquiries about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll take a look at it. We'll also make sure we get public safety involved in it. I hear what you're saying. One of the challenges is that with the new LEDs that use, 5% of what the energy was before of the old lights, is they just are brighter.
Well, maybe we could turn half of them off then or something. I mean,
well, that would make sense.
Well,
No.
the point is they belong to us. We control our street lights. It seems to me we could do something just to make it less. I just find it very annoying, and I've had a number of people mention it to me as well. It's like, it's new town center, it just doesn't go.
Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll talk to John, we'll talk to public safety, and we'll report back to you on what our options are. And then you guys get to decide what you want to do. Because I think you're in charge of streetlights.
Thank you. That's right.
I don't believe
right.
that's...
I don't think those are...
Those aren't streetlights.
Right, they're not. It's separate.
They're separate, okay.
Well, we'll establish ownership and responsibility as part of your
I think
investigation,
there's something we can do about it.
if we want to.
Correct.
Yeah. Mr. Dunham?
Oh. Okay, first up, got a letter, and I believe all the members of the board got this letter. If not, at least I know the chairman and myself got it. From a town resident in Crystal Lake area, and asking about drones, if the town has a policy on them. Apparently, there's a person or a couple of people that have drones that fly over the area quite a bit, and they're kind of worried about privacy. You know, the drones can drop down and look into windows and whatnot. And they're wondering if we have any type of policy on either having drones registered in the town, policy as to where they can be used. And I don't believe we have anything, and I don't even know who we would go to find out, but
That's
if
interesting.
other towns have a policy like that, but maybe that's something
I didn't get that letter.
our town administrator could take a look at.
We will take a look at it. I know the FAA regulates drones.
Yeah, you have to register them for like $5.
Yeah.
But then other than that, it's pretty much wide open. I don't think the FAA has any real flight level restrictions except near airports.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, we'll look into it. I just don't know. if
Yeah,
it's possible.
I don't either.
Yeah.
You might check with K&P. I have to assume that we're not the first community where the privacy issue's been raised. When you think of it, someone that's adroit at flying a drone could, again, have it hover outside someone's bedroom window. So my suspicion is that we're not the first community to make the inquiry. So I think if you start with K&P, that they might have some of the latest. There may not be nothing drafted yet, but they may be in the cutting edge of.
And then maybe checking with Representative Gifford, see if she knows of anything at this
Excellent idea.
at the state.
Mike, we may end up in it. It'll fall into a private property issue. That it may end up being an individual issue that has to deal with this, because anything that you can see onto a property from a public way, including the air, is considered public access. Now, when you get into windows and you start to look at that, I think it is a little bit more complicated that it gets in there. But we will find out and get back to you.
All right. Thank you.
And like you said, I hope everybody had a very Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and Happy New Year. And now that we're into the new year, please don't forget there's still the need for those less fortunate for the food pantry and whatnot. I do want to thank the police department and for all the work they did, the union with the Villa Cruiser program. That was very successful this year, and they did an outstanding job with that. And other than that, just a reminder, everybody, this Thursday, 7 o'clock, we'll be having the public hearing for the urban renewal plan. As Mr. Malinowski said, we'll be starting off with the presentation by the RDA, the preferred developer will be speaking, Mr. Malinowski, and I believe Mr. Neep is going to wants a few minutes with us too for some a point of reference, and then we'll get into people's comments, and I'm looking forward to hearing those comments. First, Carver residents who have property that's listed to be acquired. Next would be non-residents that have property to be acquired. Then all Carver residents, and then Plimpton residents who are abutters, and then all residents. At the conclusion of the public hearing, then the board will have to go ahead and we'll have our deliberations. We'll have to decide then if we're going to do the deliberations Thursday night or put them off to our next regularly scheduled meeting. Depending on the time, I would recommend us try our best to get through them Thursday night so we're not leaving people hanging. And we'll see what happens.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just thought of something that I forgot when you mentioned the food pantry.
Mm-hmm.
I did get the approval from the group of motorcycle riders who've been helping the Shane Gives Thanks Food Pantry, and it's the Patriot Riders, Massachusetts Chapter 5. And they've donated a whole ton of time, energy, freezers, and they built a lot of the shelving down there. So I just wanted to acknowledge them.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. A reminder that, again, we have the joint meeting that we have quarterly with the Board of Selectmen and the School Committee coming up on Thursday night, January 12th. And I did send out a note to all of you asking that if you had any specific thoughts for agenda items to have them to me by this Thursday so that I can work with the school committee and get an agenda together and get that out to everybody. Excuse me, Capital Outlay began meeting today. I think Michael shared with us the capital outlay recommendations that he and the department heads have come up with to this point in time. Now capital outlay will take a look at all those recommendations, kick the tires, meet with the individual committees, and then come back with their own recommendations, which may very well be in line with what the town administrator's already put together, but it's another set of eyes looking over the issues and asking the questions. And then finally, I just wanted to put the board on notice that it's my intention on Thursday night to recommend that Alan chair the meeting as opposed to myself. Alan has been intimately involved throughout this entire process, including attending meetings up in Plimpton, and I don't think he's missed a meeting throughout the entire process. I think he's in a position to run the meeting more efficiently, knowing the people that are involved. So it'll be my recommendation at the start of our meeting on Thursday, if Alan's willing, that he chair the meeting. With that, we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a vote to approve the committee handbook. That got in the packets a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look them over.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I move that we vote to approve the handbook.
Is there a second?
I can second that, but I have a couple of points
Okay.
to make as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Proceed.
So on page 3, under other terminations, I realize that this is talking about appointments, and I believe it's also in the town bylaws, or maybe it's open meeting law. It might be open meeting law. That if an appointed member of a board, commission, or committee misses 3 meetings, and the chair is authorized already to write them a letter saying they're out of there. So that was the first thing. And the second thing is that, although I know it says appointments, I wanted to make it very clear that this can't happen to elected officials, for better or for worse. I mean, you know, we could get elected and then never show up, and there's nothing anyone can do about it, which is not good, but that's the way it is.
And again, remember, these are guidelines. These aren't bylaws. They don't hold any.
Well,
but I understand what you're saying.
I think maybe it should be cited wherever that is, and I think it's open meeting law that says if an appointed member of one of these, whatever town boards, committees, or commissions misses 3 meetings, the chair is authorized to say, you're gone. So it's kind of nice to have that as a backup. This isn't.
So you'd like the basically the bylaw reference to be included there?
Whether it's the bylaw or an open meeting law, yeah, I think it would be a good idea.
I think that'd be a good idea.
It's the
It kind of
bylaw.
gives them a little meat, so that it's not just like we wish you would do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then on page 7, I think this was probably just maybe a typo, but it says that the number 5, page 7, under communication and document guidelines, number 5, if the member of the staff requests a legal opinion regarding a case that had been filed, the chair or vice chair should be notified as soon as possible that such a request was made and the reason it was made, and unless presented with unavoidable circumstances prior to the request being made. So my point is that you can't actually notify the chair or the vice chair that a request was made until it's made. You can't notify them prior to it.
So it almost should say if a member of the staff plans on requesting a legal opinion.
Something to clear that up, because this can't happen. It's just not logically possible. In other words, if that's what...
Okay, yeah,
if
so
that's
change
what's
the
meant,
wording
if
so that it
this-
says, and it's almost, and also try to notify the chair or vice chair prior to making the...
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we can change that wording.
And on number 7 on that same page, now I suppose this depends on what you mean by staff, but as I'm reading this, staff means department heads?
Well, any member of any town employee, you know.
Okay, well, I think that should be clarified, because my understanding, at least sort of a good number of years I worked here, department heads, part of their job is to do the homework, to be the expert, and to give recommendations. They're not obviously supposed to be telling the board, you know, you do this or else, because boards can make their own decisions, but they need some input from someone. So I think maybe it should be clarified there that if this refers to just any person, then that's a perfectly reasonable thing to say. You know, not everyone can just be telling boards and committees with their opinion on the matter, but I think a staff person who's hired as say, a town planner almost has a duty to say, okay, here's the homework, here's the information. From my knowledge and experience, my recommendation is this. There are these other 5 choices. Here are the consequences of everything. You guys make up your mind. But to not give them any guidance.
Yeah, I don't think the intent is. I think the key word there is instructions, as opposed to guidance. I think it's making the distinction that the staff isn't in a position to be telling the board or committee what to do.
So again, I think there's 2 issues. We need to be clear on who we mean by staff.
Yeah, that's the intention was any member of anyone that works for the town.
Okay, and then I think that if the intention is to allow department heads to give their boards, committees, and commissions guidelines and recommendations, then that should be stated. That's part of their job. Otherwise, why do you have them? The board can go home and do their own homework.
But it's not saying they shouldn't. It's just saying they should not tell. Instruction implies to tell as opposed to
well,
suggest.
Maybe that should be made clear then. That, instructions. I think a distinction needs to be made between telling a board what to do versus giving them some guidance. Here are your options. Here's the standard recommendation that most, I'm picking on town planner just because everyone knows the job title. Here's a standard recommendation in this kind of case that I've given board members before.
So you could almost add at the end, but rather only guidance, or rather guidance.
Yeah, but I think it could extend to recommendations. That's not telling them they have to do that.
No, but guidance and recommendations as opposed to instruction. I think
Correct.
that was the point.
That was exactly my point. Yep.
Okay. All right. So we'll adjust that as well.
Okay.
Anything else?
Not for me.
Okay.
That's good.
Do you need a revised motion with the amendments?
So you're revising a motion to
accept
with those amendments.
with those amendments.
Okay.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, the ayes have it. All right. Next item on the agenda is to vote to reapprove the Lakeville Animal Shelter Agreement. What's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion to reapprove. I'm just curious why we're having to reapprove it.
Because it runs out after a certain period of time, so we got a notice from the Lakeville Selectmen asking us to.
Oh, I thought we just signed it.
Well, it's been out there, but
Okay.
we may have signed it in advance of this vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Motion to reapprove the agreement between the Lakeville Board of Selectmen.
Signed it subject to this vote.
Right.
And I think there was also a reminder that only the appropriate animal officers and officers of the town should be dealing with the Lakeville Animal Shelter, that citizens should not be dropping their pets off there themselves. I think that was.
Unless they pay the fee.
Pardon me?
Unless they pay the fee.
Well, they can pick them up if they pay the fee. Yeah.
But I think the intention was that they just didn't want people from around various towns that have been participating just showing up, dropping off animals. Motion made and seconded. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Next item, discussion on Comcast Cable Communications. The license expires in about 2 years now, I guess, 2.5 years. It's not actually too early. This is about the time when we get in contact with our cable council to start getting some sense of what's going on in the cable community. I know there's been some discussion in town about alternatives to Comcast, and the cable committee has in the past sought out Verizon specifically and asked them to consider coming into town. Apparently, especially with first of all, Verizon had gone through a build-out and had come to the end of the build-out, and they were on hiatus for a while. I think they're opening up again, but our community specifically, because it's so big, with so many miles and miles and miles of roadway that need to be wired, but with relatively few residents, it's not all that economically appealing to come in and compete. However, we will be making it a point to reach out to them again as we're entering into this contract, do our due diligence with Verizon and any other cable company. We certainly are wide open to competition if anybody else would come in. The problem has been that Other than DirecTV and things of that nature, it's been limited as to what we can do.
And there have been many complaints by residents of the poor service that we sometimes get from Comcast in this community.
And Ron, I wanted to point out is that my husband and I run a small business, and when we first started it, the service was even worse. And I mean, he couldn't even do webcam operations at home. We can do those now. But one question that I have for your group there is to ask them, is to kind of poll some of the larger businesses in town. Are they satisfied with it? Is the internet speed, just the reliability, the whole, just, you know, we need to find out. I mean, we want the businesses to be happy.
A survey is normally part of the process that we go through.
Okay.
So that'll be gearing up over the next couple of years.
So, Mr. Chairman, just for my edification, does the board need to authorize your committee to do this again this time, or is that by the organizational powers your committee has? This is a new contract.
Well, again, don't confuse my participation with Area 58 as being the cable advisory committee for the town.
Okay.
I was on both, and the cable advisory committee probably needs to be reconstituted. Okay. My guess is that if you go back and look at the members, you know, because it's a 10-year contract, and if you went back and looked at the members of the last committee, many of them may even no longer be in town. So if Elaine, if you could just pop me an email with who's currently on there, I'd suggest that maybe it might be time to put a call out to the public for anybody that might be interested in participating in the next round of negotiations to send in an application of interest.
Do you know, as part of your Area 58, if the other two towns have a similar type expiration timetable?
No, Plimpton just renewed, and Halifax, I think, was maybe 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
There's no point in trying to negotiate.
No, unfortunately, there's it's unfortunately, in fact, Plimpton and Halifax, I think, are maybe a year apart, if that. And they just got through the process.
And they're both Comcast only?
Yes. Yeah. Again, their Comcast is this. You know, what the problem we have in this town is similar to what, you know, Plimpton has and Halifax. You know, the number of the size of the population relative to the miles you have to run the fiber optic cable makes it difficult. Yeah, so it's probably time to put out that announcement that we would like to have anybody interested. I'm not going to be getting active tomorrow, but I'd like to get the committee constituted, and I'll be willing to serve again. Okay, update on the tax bill insert. This was the insert that I think we all had a chance to take a look at, and that was sent out with the intention to go to every taxpayer to help explain what was going on in the tax bill, since these last tax bills included the first debt exclusion payment. And I understand that perhaps not every tax bill had an insert. Can you shed some light on that?
So the staff has done some research on that, and you know, there have been some tax bills that have been returned due to address issues. Those have been opened by staff, and they have the inserts in there. I think I polled most of the board, and staff has also been talking to their neighbors and everything about this insert. We've also gone back to the company that was paid to insert the billings. We believe that that was inserted properly. Having said that, you know, clearly there wasn't 100% success. There may have been a 99.95% success. Once the machines are inputting things, sometimes the paper may stick and you may have missed somebody. But the belief is, given the polling that we've done, is that those inserts were received by the vast majority of all taxpayers. One of the things that we've noticed is that we may want to look at, and we will look at next time, is this time when they were printed on white paper. They were not printed on bright yellow or bright pink or whatever it is. So sometimes they still may be stuck in the envelope, or they may have been mistakenly thrown away because they just blended in with the envelope. But again, we believe that they were adequately submitted, and we've only had less than a handful of people that have said they didn't receive it.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
before we go on, I was just wondering, where do we stand for reviewing and getting ready to review executive session minutes so we can figure out which ones we're going to be able to release to the public?
So we've gone through that process. The chairman and I and Elaine went through a big batch of them. We've sent them off to town council because we believe we have a good batch to release, and we just have them reviewing it due to some personnel issues and determine if there's any names that need to be redacted due to potentially disciplinary issues that that would not be able to be released. So I would suspect at our next meeting, hopefully we'll have town council's response back and hopefully have a packet for you to review and release.
And I was going through the packet before and noticed we did have, there was a thing in there from K&P about even executive sessions for contract negotiations. After a period of time, they should be released. Are we prepared to be doing that?
I didn't see that in my conversations with K&P. Contract negotiations are an ongoing process, but I'll look into that again with them.
Yeah, it said in the paperwork that's in our package here.
Oh, you're talking about the committee's thing with general guidance.
Well, it's open meeting law notice checklist from K&P, and basically there has been some towns that say no, you could not ever do it, and there's never been an appeal court case on, appellate court case made to it according to what K&P said. So, we could either keep following what we've been doing and run the risk of it finally, being put into a court case, or I'd just like to have a clear reading from K&P about that, given what they, and it was under their open meeting law 2015 recap.
Yeah, I'll check that with them, but I had asked them that recently, and they told me no, that until something changes, they want to.
Yeah, second paragraph, executive session minutes, collective bargaining strategy. About halfway down, the division has agreed that such minutes may be withheld for a period, but that, in quotes, such minutes may not be held indefinitely, unquote. OML 2015-62. At this time, no appellate court has ruled on the application of the exemption, basically to continually withhold it. So that's what I need to get clarified, because it's in their own write-up.
Yeah.
So it's what they put in their executive session minutes, collective bargaining strategy. If we could get a clarification on that, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. All right. What's the pleasure of the board for the minutes of December 20th?
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the minutes from the meeting of December 20th.
There a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Our next meetings, we have the public hearing on the urban renewal project this coming Thursday night. That will be at 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock here in this meeting room. Then on the 12th, Thursday the 12th, normally that's downstairs, I think, meeting room 4. We'll be having the joint meeting, the quarterly meeting of the school committee and the Board of Selectmen. So that's on the 17th, on the 12th. And then our next Board of Selectmen meeting will be on Tuesday the 17th. Is there a need for an executive session this evening, sir?
There's none right now.
Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Further discussion? Being none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you. I guess the next time, well, we'll be here on Thursday night, but I will just